Are we really supposed to brake with 4 fingers? Is that the right way to do it? Or are all those riders who brake with 2 fingers, 3 fingers, or even 1 finger just destined to become a heaping ball of flame on the side of the highway unless luck just happens to help them out? If you've taken an MSF course, the Motorcycle Safety Foundation course, and you were told you should use 4 fingers to brake, that's the right way to do it, that's the only way to do it, that's how riders do it, you were lied to. That's not true at all. And in fact, not just in the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, but also other curricula up in Canada, in the UK, in New Zealand, in Australia, it's a really common thing to have instructors emphasize that you should use 4 fingers to brake. Now, to be clear, I'm not telling you that braking with 4 fingers is wrong. What I'm saying is teaching somebody that 4 fingers is the only way or the correct way to brake is wrong. There's a big difference between the two. Now, to give you a little background, not only am I an instructor from all the way back to '96 teaching the MSF curricula, but also I teach a lot of other different curricula. I also write curricula and I run a school. I'm not new to this game. But I started wondering, why is it, and maybe I'm missing something. So I took the manual, which I know very well, and I studied it from one end to the other. I got into the glossary. I read all of the rationales about why we teach what we teach. I went through the instructor book that they use out on the range, where they're doing the riding. And on this book, there's directions that tell you what to do as a rider. Not one time does it mention using 4 fingers. In fact, it doesn't mention fingers at all. On these same cards, there's often little tips for doing a demonstration to ride before the students or coaching tips. Not one single mention of how many fingers to use. Back in 1973, the Motorcycle Safety Foundation was started through the Motorcycle Industry Council. And they launched their very first curricula called the Beginning Rider Course. 3 years later, they revised that to the Motorcycle Rider Course. Neither one of those curricula referred to the number of fingers needed for braking, and specifically nothing about 4-finger braking. In 1981, there was a study done. It's most commonly known as the Hurt study, but also it was officially called the Motorcycle Accident Cause Factors and Identifications of Countermeasures. MSF went back and revised their curricula, the Motorcycle Rider Course, to call it the Motorcycle Rider Course, Riding and Street Skills. That was the course I was certified when I first became an instructor. Even after all of that research, after that very famous study, there was nothing added to the curricula to talk about the number of fingers needed for braking. It's not there. It's not in the instructor manual, it's not in the student book, it's not in the range cards. And that takes us all the way back to where we started. The Basic Rider Course and the Basic Rider Course updated in 2014. I did talk to a chief instructor or an instructor trainer for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, one who trains instructors. I asked him, can you take a look at your book and tell me, is it in your manual? But it's not. The last stage was to go, let's just call the guy who wrote the curricula. So I reached out to Dr. Ray Oakes at the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. When I asked Ray, and I said, Ray, does the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, does MSF teach 4-finger braking? His answer was simple, no. I went to the Motorcycle Task Analysis. This is a book that does nothing but break down every single action you do on a motorcycle and how it affects you on the motorcycle. And when I dug through this whole book, I found one reference. Finally, I found one reference about braking and the number of fingers. And it says, squeezing the front brake lever with 2 or 3 fingers gives the operator a good grip on the hand grips. And I believe that because this is something that started long before even the Motorcycle Safety Foundation existed. Maybe it's because when you needed to stop a bike in the 60s or before, if you weren't using four fingers, you just weren't going to stop. And I did find some instructions from 1965, Freedom of the Road, and I read through this book line by line, and even in the 60s, they weren't talking about how many fingers to use. If we leave the conventional motorcycle training world and we look at things like motorcycle accident and litigation, is there anything within the legal documents where there's a reference to it? But again, nothing. If I look at riders and instructors that are not traditional, maybe somebody like Andy Abbott, who wrote the book for performance riding techniques for racers. Right? He's looking at high performance, or you look at Nick Einich or Reg Pridmore. These guys are primarily track riders, and they're all telling you two fingers. Lee Parks is one of the exceptions. In his book, in his curricula, he mentions fingers. His reference is going back to saying, if you have a Harley from 1999 or older, you might need more than four fingers. And he's correct. And it's not just the Harleys of that date. Obviously, if we go farther back, technology wasn't the same. So this is a myth that continues to perpetuate the industry, to travel all the way through. I talked to a trainer up in Canada, and I looked at their program up there, the ICBC, went through all of their books and materials, and that instructor did have a quote. He was able to go, hey, in my school manual, the instructor manual, it tells me to teach four fingers. But when he went to the actual curricula that was written, not by the school, but by the national or the federal organization, there was no reference to four fingers. And I'm finding the same thing here. When I go to the United States, there's one program I found that does have a reference to the number of fingers. And that's when I get into the program written down in Oregon, the basic rider training, which is used in Idaho and Illinois. And it does have one reference to four fingers. And it's just on when they're talking about the controls. But it's not in their instructor manual or their range cards where they teach riders. It's not in the coaching tips for riders. It's in one small reference. And again, if it was that important, why is it stressed so heavily and why is it so hard to find? The Motorcycle Safety Foundation, MSF, does not teach four fingers. It's the instructors that do. I even called several state coordinators, the people that run the programs in the state, and one of them was adamant. It's absolutely there. My instructors will teach four fingers because that's the way it's supposed to be done. And they use the MSF curricula. When I asked for evidence or proof or a reference or a book on where it says that, I got nothing. Not a single thing came back on where that is. It's just not the case. So why do instructors teach four-finger braking? Besides the fact that others teach it and the trainers that train them teach them. Now, keep in mind, this is not a dig on those instructors. These are guys who are essentially volunteers. They work for very little money. They give up their riding weekends and their time to go out to try to help other riders ride. They have the minimal training before they go out, and all they have is the book that they're given to work with. These are good people. But often they're teaching what they think they're supposed to teach, not what they're really supposed to be teaching. Now that the myth of the MSF teaching four-finger braking is busted, it is important to understand that those instructors do have good reason to teach four fingers to brand new riders. When you have 12 riders or more, depending on the curricula, riding around a parking lot that have no idea what they're doing, having them separate the braking from the throttle is something that really helps those riders. If you have people who are uncoordinated, it really helps them to do that. If you have them reach forward and touch the lever before they squeeze it, they're far less likely to grab the brake and crash. Four-finger braking certainly has its place. It has it on certain bikes. It has it at a certain stage of riding. The danger comes from teaching it as it is the only thing, the only way, this is how we brake, and leaving riders believing that, or teaching it as if it's part of the curricula, or fixing riders who already have good coordination using 2 fingers because of past experience and telling them that they're wrong. That's where things go astray. I have no problem with 4-finger braking or 1-finger braking or 3-finger braking, depending on the environment. Off-road, I teach 1 to 3 fingers. We always leave 1 finger hooked around the bar. On the racetrack, I generally taught 2 fingers as a go-to. When I taught brand new riders, I frequently had people use 4 fingers for braking. But I never teach anything as the only way, the right way, and I certainly don't misquote the curricula I'm teaching. Thanks for watching the channel. If you enjoyed this, if you enjoy other rants and educational videos that I do, please take a look at Patreon and join me there. That helps keep the channel alive. Also, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the little bell. That's what makes sure that you get notified that I have a new video out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.